and focusing on public relations. And I got called to my professor's office after class one day, and I thought I was in trouble, but it turned out my professor wanted to offer me an internship with the city of Anaheim. And so that's where I got my first real taste of real-life work, working for the city of Anaheim and working for the mayor's office. That's where I met Mary Jo, and had a great opportunity to really start developing my personal brand there. I did that for about a year and a half working for the city, and then got a phone call from the county of Orange, which the city of Anaheim falls in, and they said, hey, we like what you're doing. We've heard good things. Would you like to come do what you're doing there with us? I said, absolutely. Packed up my things, went over to the county, and did communications and events for a total of 3 years. Ended up working my way up to Director of Communications in a matter of 3 years at the ripe age of 23, and had some great opportunities and great timing, being in the right place at the right time, and I got some great opportunities to do some amazing things. So I was there for about 3 years and got a phone call from a small company in Anaheim called DIDNT, and they said, hey, we like what you're doing over there. Would you want to come do that for us? I said, absolutely. So I packed my bags and went over to DIDNT and started as Executive Communications Manager, where I managed and oversaw all the communications for the executives based in Southern California, but primarily the president of Disneyland. Anything from a thank you note to a speech to media talking points. All of that came from my office. It was a great way to get entrenched into the means of and the runnings of a large business like Disney, and it was a great opportunity. And I did that for about 2 years, and I got a phone call from our partners in the digital marketing side of things that said, hey, we like what you're doing over there. Would you want to come work for us and launch a brand new social media program that we're looking to launch? I said, absolutely. So I packed my bags and went over there and launched the first ever social media command center for the Walt Disney Company, where we had a room full of monitors, very similar to what you probably see in a lot of different command centers for crisis response or for larger events. We had one for every day for people who were in the park asking questions and saying things on social. We wanted a hub where we could monitor, listen, and engage through social media. So I did that for another 2 years, and then I just recently got a phone call from Taco Bell, and they said, hey, we've developed a position that we think would be good for you. We love what you've done. Would you want to come over and work for us and do that for us? So I'm actually in my week of unemployment now, and then I'll start with Taco Bell on Tuesday. So the reason I tell that story, and the reason I tell that story in that way, is because I've never had to apply for a job. And the reason I've never had to apply for a job is because of the hopeful success of my personal brand. To me, that personal brand is that thing that's going to set me aside from somebody else, and it's going to make sure that I'm pulled from a job I love and just pushed into a job that I love even more based on my qualifications that I presented through my work, but also my network and the image I've portrayed of myself along the way. So with that, we'll kick it off into the presentation. And again, if you do have any questions, make sure you keep track of those, and we'll get to those at the very end. So, so for me, I do happen to think that the most valuable product or piece that is produced by your company is no longer a tangible asset. It's no longer a service. It's really you. And the brand that you create as an employee, as an individual, your brand is really the reason that a business will succeed, and whether or not you will succeed beyond that business. And whether businesses fold or fizzle or flourish, one core asset remains, and that is you yourself as an individual and your brand. And if done correctly, a successful personal brand is the very reason why you will never have to apply for another job. And you may notice that very successful people get recruited from a job they love to a job they love even more, and it's because of the majority of the work that they put into their future careers. It happens well before they are even looking, and it all starts with your personal brand. It allows you really to implant a virtual resume, if you will, into the minds of everyone that you touch. And when opportunities present themselves, you'll be pushed to the top of I know a guy or I know a girl list. And that's really my big goal in life, is to be at the top of that I know a guy list, because opportunities that come down the road, people are going to put together a short list, and my goal is to be on that list. So first off, personal brand, what is it? When you think about a personal brand, I think the easiest thing to do is just to think about the branding of a business, or business branding. So if you were to take a look at two very distinctive brands, two powerful brands, something like Taco Bell and Mercedes-Benz, these are two brands that have very distinct personalities. They're very different personalities. And I think one thing that's really important to remember with personal branding, as in branding in anything, is that every single one is very, very different. Taco Bell's brand would not be able to work with Mercedes-Benz, and vice versa. They have a specific audience, and they have a specific voice, and they have a specific brand that they continue to push. Same when you think of all other types of different brands. Each one of these brands is very, very different, but they've found a powerful voice for themselves that works and is very successful for them. So one thing to keep in mind of when you think about what is personal brand, it's also very important in mind to keep what isn't a personal brand. And it's not universal. Everyone's personal brand is going to be very different. What I talk about today is going to be some of the things that have worked for me. Doesn't necessarily mean that it'll be perfect for everybody, or that it's a one-size-fit-all solution. But it is important to understand that everything is different. And then hopefully through this presentation you can pick out a couple different things that may be able to help support you and your personal brand along the way. So when I think of personal brand, I really think of it being built up of 5 different pieces. The first piece being your name. So really, your personal brand is not built upon your name, but rather what the value of your name holds. So when someone says your name, what emotions does that evoke in them, and what groundwork have you done that just your name carries a value of your personal brand? Your image, obviously the best version of yourself being put forward on a consistent basis. Third, your online ID. I like to say that you're only as good as the last Google search results that come up when someone Googles you. Your reputation. This is the buzz that you create in a room before you even arrive, or what people are talking about when you leave. And finally, your network. This is a big piece. The bigger your network, obviously, the bigger your brand can be. Now, if you take all 5 of those components and create into a definition of personal brand, I like to define it as the definition of you as defined by others. The definition of you as defined by others. I say that because, to me, perception is really reality. I think we see that a lot of time in communications and marketing. Your brand is not necessarily what you do, but what people think you do. And if you were to think about someone in the news article that has had branding issues, for example, like someone like Lindsay Lohan, the perception of her as a personal brand is not a good one. The perception that we have created or that we identify in her is not a good one. But if you were to ask her, or if you were to ask her publicist of what Lindsay's brand was, chances are it would be someone who's a award-winning actress, an upstanding citizen, someone who's devoted to the community, and yada, yada, yada. But that's not the brand that we see. That's not the brand that she's created. The perception is the brand that she's created. So we, as the public, are the holders of that brand value for her. So it doesn't matter what your goal or what your mission is. If you don't execute it properly, whatever the perception is, that's really what the brand and how the brand is created. So why is it important? I kind of alluded to it earlier. If resumes didn't exist, would you be confident that you could get a job? Just think about that for a split moment. If resumes did not exist, would you feel confident that you would be able to secure a job that you would want for your future? And some people may well say, yes, I do feel confident, and others may not feel as confident, and that's okay too. But hopefully going through this will help you make sure that this answer is absolutely, I feel confident that if resumes didn't exist, there should still be no issue for me getting a job. So for me, I've noticed one thing that's a very common trend. Companies now are becoming a lot more like individuals, and individuals are becoming a lot more like companies. So if you were to think of yourself and your personal brand as a company, think of yourself as a CEO of the you company. You run the show. You go through all of the strategic planning of where you're going to take this company. You manage all of its employees. You really run the show. You are the CEO and operator of the you company. Under that CEO, you have tons of employees. You have your social media manager. That is you. You're operating all of your social media strategically and in a planned way. Everything has a purpose of what you do and why you do it on the social media presence. You also serve as a publicist. Anything that you say or do in a public perspective goes through you. You are the filter that you've created, that any sort of messaging comes through you and makes sure that it's succinct and proper and in the best place. You're also the salesperson for your company. You are selling the biggest product you could possibly have, which is yourself. You're also the assistant. You're the glue that holds everything together. You're making those meetings. You're scheduling. You're calendaring. You are doing a lot of the work running around and doing a lot to keep everything together. And you're also the intern. You're at the bottom of the totem pole. You're there early. You're staying late. You're doing all the little things that a lot of things depend on in order to run very succinctly. All of these different roles and many, many more you do on a daily basis just to run a successful personal brand. As a marketer, as a communications practitioner, also it's important to remember that the biggest and most important client that you'll ever have in your career is yourself. Again, you'll have clients that you work with or businesses that you'll work with for years, and you may switch jobs and you may switch clients. But there's one thing that you will never change, and that is you. You'll never switch you. So that's something that's very consistent that you'll have over your entire career. So it's very important to spend a lot of quality time and make sure that you're being the best possible you. So now a few secrets of personal branding. And again, some of these aren't deep, dark secrets. They're really just common sense, but maybe put in a different way or different perspective that will allow you to think of things just a little bit differently. So it's really important, first off, to set a strong foundation. Again, with anything, when you think of any sort of communication plan or marketing plan with a business, everything works the same way when you think about a personal brand. First off, you have to define success. You really need to determine what it is you're trying to accomplish in your personal life, in your professional life. What is your definition of success? Once you have that, you'll really have an ability to create an actual plan. Again, this is the same thing that people and companies do for their company brands. You're doing the same thing, you're just doing it for yourself. Actually sitting down and taking a moment to create a SWOT analysis actually does a lot more than people think. So SWOT analysis, of course, is going over your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, your threats. Sitting down and saying, okay, as an individual, what are my strengths? What do I bring to the table? Where are my weaknesses? Where are my opportunities? And what are the threats that are hindering me from accomplishing my version of success? Again, these are things that people do on a regular basis for companies. You just want to do it for yourself. Same thing, creating a roadmap. It's very, very difficult to figure out where you're going to go without having a detailed map. Business plans, mission statements, objectives, goals, those are all very, very common things that we see in companies, but not as much in the individual role. So I do encourage people to put together those types of things for themselves, and it'll help them kind of map out, again, what your path will be to get that success. And I think the better outline that you do create, I think the easier that path will be for you. It's very important to make an impression with personal branding, because sometimes that's all it is really an impression. Again, it's that perception. A little anecdote that I like to try to motivate people with is live every day like you're on a first date. If you think back to when your last first date was, you're the best possible version of yourself at all times. I think about the first date I had with my wife. I was perfect. All of my skeletons in the closet were pushed way back, and those didn't come out for a very long time. So this is the version of myself. And that's what personal brand is. It's just on a more consistent basis. So living consistently the best version of yourself each and every day. And in making an impression, it's important to put together what I call a branding toolkit. So this consists of everything from an elevator pitch to a personal website, blog, social media presence, your resume, business cards, reference, all of these things that will help add to your individual personal presence. All of these things you should have accessible at any moment in time. I found that the best opportunities that come up to really network and engage with individuals typically happen when you're not expecting it. So whether you're in a grocery store or at a networking event, all of these items should be within reach to be able to provide to somebody at any moment, because you never know when those opportunities will arise that you'll be able to use these individual tools to help push your personal brand. And reiterating what I mentioned before, it's really important just to mirror your version of success. If you want to be at a certain place, it's very important for your brand to mirror that version of success. Next up, to get social. This is a very, very important piece where social media has really taken this personal branding trend to a whole nother level. It's really important, however, to remember that social media is not a brand strategy. It is merely a tool. And I tell this to companies, I tell this to individuals. It's very important to remember social media is not a brand strategy. It's a tool. Just like you couldn't build a house with just a hammer, you can't build a personal brand with just social media. You can't build a house without a hammer, but it's not your sole tool to get that job done. Same with social media. One of the analogies I like to run when talking about social media and brand is the setup of a car company. If you really look at a car company like Chevrolet, you see the brand here on the screen. This is just a logo. This is Chevrolet, Chevy. This is the brand that we've all known and have gotten to know over the years based off of the marketing and perception that this company has created. You talk about their slogans or their brands. They're an American Revolution. They're like a rock. Chevy runs deep. These are all the things that have been entrenched in their brand that we've learned through the years. And then you look at all the different actual vehicles that they own and run on a daily basis. So you have the Corvette, the Silverado, the Malibu, the Impala. All of these vehicles are very, very different. They have different drivers. They have different voices. They have different characteristics. And they have different marketing plans. Chevy wouldn't have the same marketing plan for Corvette as it would for the Silverado truck. They understand that the audience for those two cars, those two vehicles, are very, very different. Now, all of those cars, even though they are different, they all filter back up to that overall brand of Chevy. If I were to ask the owner of a Corvette and the owner of a Silverado to describe what Chevy means to them in 10 words, chances are you'd get different words, but you would get a couple of crossover words. Those would be the American, like a rock, Chevy runs deep. Those would be where the crossover is. Aside from that, there's going to be individual characteristics that what Chevy means to those people. So if you were to take that same model and you were to think about your personal brand, so this is you as an individual, you have your slogan, whatever that version of success is for you, and instead of having actual vehicles, you have your social media channels, your social media vehicles. Just like Chevy's Corvette and Silverado and Impala, they all work very differently. Each one of these channels has a different audience. Each one of these channels has a very different message and a very different means of communication. So just like Chevy wouldn't have the same communications plan for Corvette as it would for Silverado, you yourself should not have the same communications plan or strategy for LinkedIn as you would on Facebook or LinkedIn as you would on Twitter. These things are very important to understand that they work in individual components, and you can't have crossover. You can have crossover for some of them that work better together, but where I see a lot of people get in trouble with their social media strategy is posting the same message on all the platforms with one click of the button. I think there's a lot of ease into doing that, but you really have a miss when you talk about trying to reach out to your individual audience of these components. So again, just like how Chevrolet's process worked, all of these individual channels and vehicles work their way up and filter through your brand and your brand strategy. In addition, they can also work together and to utilize one another. Even though this message may not be identical on each of the platforms, they are being used to complement one another, and I'll show you how to best do that as well. So for me, the way I break down some of these social channels that help me with my personal brand is for LinkedIn. I think of LinkedIn as my work or my office. This is where I go into the office. This is where I put a suit and tie on every day. This is where I rub shoulders with colleagues. This is where I try to expand my professional network. And this is where I do that through LinkedIn. That's my professional network. Facebook is my home. A lot of people have different versions of how they like to portray their home. Me, personally, I have an open door policy in my house. I welcome anybody to my home, whether it's one of my fantasy football buddies or the president of Disneyland. I invite them over because to me, I feel that my personal side of my life is a strengthening component to my overall brand. I want the folks that I work with to know that on the weekend I was building a bathroom from scratch, or that my dog is running crazy and doing wacky things. That personal piece of things to me helps my brand. Now, that's not for everybody. Obviously, privacy is a big thing for a lot of people's social media presence, and Facebook does a great job of individually tailoring your messages to whatever audience you want to see it. So even if it's just one specific message you don't want a couple specific people to see, you can tailor it that way, and I think it's very, very important to get to know the privacy settings of something like Facebook very, very well. Again, for me, my home life is very valuable into my overall personal brand. It adds another element that people can relate to that allows me to be successful. Twitter, to me, is my grand central station. This is really a great hub. Anything outbound and inbound kind of go through this central station. And this is one of those tools that is able to utilize the other social channels really well. I can utilize the stories I post on LinkedIn, or the pictures I post on Facebook, or the things that I do on my blog. All of those things can filter through Twitter, and I can push it out through that channel of communication as well. That's my grand central station. And then a personal blog, I think, is very important. This allows me to set myself up as an individual and also as an industry or individual piece expert. Now, Mary Jo mentioned that I'm an expert in social media, or I'm an expert in personal branding. I didn't take any further classes. I didn't take any sort of educational background to make me an expert in something. An expert is just, again, a perception of, because I've been in the industry and because I've been doing so much research and speaking on a certain topic. But the blog allows me to talk more about a specific topic and really establish myself as someone who maybe not an expert, but knows a lot about a specific piece of information. And so that's what that blog allows me to do. So when people do refer back to that, they can refer to my blog and get information on a specific topic that may allow me to come across as an expert. And then you also have, obviously, all the other different channels that are very important in your social media, your Instagrams, your Google+, MySpace, YouTubes, Pinterest. All of these are very, very important, and again, are very different. Each one is very different. So overall arching theme of this piece of the presentation is to understand that all of these social media channels work very different, and in order to get the best use of each individual one, you have to understand the individual purpose. You wouldn't use a pocket knife just for the nail file. So you need to understand all the different pieces that make up your social media presence. When talking about social media, a couple of tricks that I do to ensure that I'm doing social media right is to have a little bit of a litmus test. One of that is what I call the iffy rule, and this stands for being interesting, funny, educational, impressive, flattering, and embarrassing. And if what I want to post on any one of my social media channels is not 2 of those 6 things, I do not post it, ever. So again, if something that I want to post is not 2 of those 6 things, I do not post it. This allows me to create, like I said, a litmus test to ensure that what I'm posting is relevant to my audience. I think we all have those people on our social channels that post everything. They talk about everything that may not be interesting or relevant to you, and you ignore them. It almost becomes a point of oversaturation and becomes an annoyance, some of the things that people post. It's very important to establish yourself with a strong personal social media presence by creating a quality filter. Now, these 6 filters don't have to be the same for everybody. You can create your own kind of set or your own kind of checklist that you go through before you post. But I would encourage you to have some sort of checklist that you go through and say, okay, is this post relevant to my audience? The last thing you want to do is oversaturate or overpost or really push information that has no interest to them. They're just going to write it off and it's not going to be interest. Again, the same way businesses use social media is the same way that you should use social media from an individual perspective. Again, everything that's done from a business standpoint is strategic. It's mapped out. It's calculated. The same should be done with everyone's personal presence to make it more quality. If something really, really interesting happens to me on a Friday night, chances are I wouldn't post it until Saturday day because I know my audience is not on the channels on a Friday night. I know I'm going to wait until the proper time to posting. Again, just like businesses do, optimal time of posting, strategic posting, calculated postings. All of those criteria should go into your personal accounts as well. And it's very, very important to prioritize. It seems like every few months there's another social channel coming up that's big, that's the next big thing, and it's very hard to keep up with what maybe the new best thing is going to be. And you kind of have to have that conversation with yourself of okay, do I need to be here? Should I be here? How am I going to manage all of these different accounts? How am I going to manage all of these different passwords? It gets to be a very daunting piece. So to me, you really have to understand where is your audience, and you have to then look at the time that you're able to spend on your social media channels. And it's okay to not be everywhere on social. It's much better to be in several places and do them very, very well as opposed to being in a lot of places and just doing them okay. So really go through all of your different platforms and really prioritize and really figure out, is this a place where I really need to be? Is this where my audience is? Is this really benefiting me, and is it benefiting my audience? And if the answer is no to both of those, then chances are you don't need to be there, and chances are it's just taking your time away from something else that could use more of your attention. Just as important as social media is, it's also very important to have a successful brand offline. When I talk to students a lot on personal branding, I tell them that they need to get out of their basement. They need to have actual in-person conversations. They need to have conversations that last longer than 140 characters. They need to hand out physical business cards. They need to look people in the eye, because unfortunately those are the types of things that are kind of a dying breed with our younger generation. So it's really, really important to make sure that you're taking your personal brand offline. You can build a personal brand online, and you can attempt to sustain those relationships online, but you really can't develop a quality relationship until it gets into that in-person experience. So networking itself is probably one of the most important things that I could pass on of your personal brand. That ability to, like I said, shake those hands, meet people, and really introduce your personal brand to as many people as possible, because that's going to be the best possible way that you're going to be at the top of that I know a guy list. To me, I call networking gardening. Every person I meet with or every person I come across with, I call that planting a seed. And so every time I shake a hand, that's me planting a seed. And then as I go through my career, as I go through my life, I'll continue to check up on that seed. I'll continue to water that seed. I'll continue to keep in contact with that relationship. Some of those relationships won't get watered as much, and they may die off. Other relationships will get watered more, and they'll get more attention, and those will grow. The whole point of this is to see the more plants that you, the more seeds that you plant, the more opportunity you have to have them grow into something fruitful. I will continue to water those through my career goes, and then sometimes, maybe 5 months down the road, something may be beneficial to me that sprouts from that relationship. It may be 5 years, it may be never. You just never know. But the ability to plant as many seeds as you can, to nurture those relationships and watch them grow into something is very, very key. I mentioned earlier that I've never had to apply for a job, and all of those jobs that developed were from networking and planting that had occurred in the past. Those seeds were planted in those individual areas. I continued to water them, and then eventually I got that phone call. That was that seed sprouting and blooming to something beneficial for me and for the seed or the partner there. That grew into something beneficial because of the nurture I gave it, but it all started with that planting of a seed, that networking piece, which is very, very important. One of the most important things with a personal brand is repetition of your reputation. You can be great at one job, but it doesn't mean anything unless you're great consistently at the work you've done. You're only as good as the last project you've accomplished. You're only as good as the last thing that you've done. So it's very, very, very important to ensure that you have that repetition of your reputation. You have to have consistency in what you do, and you have to do it on a very regular basis. I mentioned earlier that personal branding is a job, and it is. It's one of those jobs that will never stop. It's one of those consistent things that keeps on going. You have to continue to pay attention to it on a regular basis, and without that consistency, you don't have a strong personal brand. And again, so using the things that I mentioned and kind of looking back at your personal brand and understanding it now a little bit better, ask yourself that question again. If resumes didn't exist, are you confident that you could get another job? And hopefully you do feel confident that you can establish your personal brand strong enough where you do and can get another job. But use that in the back of your mind when you're doing stuff on social, when you're doing stuff in person. Is what I'm doing a step in the right direction to make sure that my personal brand is succeeding? Everything that you do and everything that you are accomplishing, you do it with your personal brand at stake. And again, that perception is reality, and everything that you do is put in under a microscope, especially in today's day and age with digital and social. So just keep that in the back of your mind and ensure that what you're doing is making your brand stronger, and also making it more successful. That will allow you to really plant those seeds and create a better personal brand for yourself in the future. So that is it as far as the presentation goes. Happy to take any sort of Q&A that you might have had. Also, I have included the presentation on SlideShare, so if you do want to download or print or take the slides from the presentation, you can click there on SlideShare and you're able to download it. But happy to answer any questions, Mary Jo, if you'd like to filter or how you'd like that to work. But thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Matt. Let's see, Jennifer, do you have access to the questions, and can you start identifying those questions and reading them off? And then for the audience, if you have questions for Matt, go ahead and start typing them in on the question module within your control panel.
All right, so our first question is about how our personal brand does or doesn't interact with our professional affiliation.
So I'm sorry, can you say this question one more time?
So how does your personal brand interact or not interact with your professional affiliation?
Yeah, it's a very important question because it's a very fine line, and depending on where you work to, it can be a little bit tougher. For example, when I worked at Disney, I spoke around the country on a regular basis. But there was a very important conversation that I needed to have with our HR partners to ensure that what I was saying was not conflicting of interest, and I did not use the Walt Disney Company as a platform for what I was trying to say. So when I did speak, I never spoke on the company itself. I spoke on the things that I had created as far as my thoughts and ideas on an individual topic, but I never talked about the individual company itself. The company was a part of my overall bio. It was a part of my overall pieces that have made me who I am. But other than that, it really didn't serve as anything else other than that. I also wanted to make sure that took place too, because I knew that I wouldn't work for Disney my entire life. So if I had too much of my brand invested in a single company, then if that company left, I wouldn't have a successful brand to stand on when it left. So now that literally within the last week, this is the first week that Disney has not been a part of my life in my career in the past 4 years, I'm still hopefully thriving. I'm still have a consistency with my brand, even though that piece is not there. So it's important to find that balance. Every company is different in how they want you to or don't want you to have that balance with if you're doing individual things on the side. Everything I did, I offered the caveat of what I'm saying is in no way the position or opinion of the Walt Disney Company, and doing things like that to, again, separate where my opinion started and where the company's strategy ended, and really find that line and be able to establish it. So again, it was a part of my overall brand, but it wasn't a majority because I knew it wouldn't always be there.
Great. So we're seeing a couple of questions about blogging, and two of them are about they've heard that consistency is very important for a successful blog, but they're not sure they can consistently post. And how do you fine-tune your expertise in blogging? So,
yeah, one of the most frequent questions I get is, okay, I understand the importance of a blog, understand the importance of finding a kind of a niche to what that blog should be, whether it be a personal blog or a company blog. You should have that niche. But people say, I just can't find the time and or content to post regularly. And that's okay. Again, you see a lot of people who say, okay, I need to post something every Tuesday and Thursday. And if I don't post something on every Tuesday and Thursday, it's a miss. And I don't really agree with that model, because if you do that, you're not necessarily going to be posting quality information. You're going to be pushed and forced into a editorial calendar and just being able to do something because you said you would do it on that day. And the quality of that content and the information that's being shared may not be as good. So I think it's important to, again, find your niche, find your voice, but also make sure that you're posting when you have that quality of content to post. People will not be upset if you go a week without posting. There is so much in this world, and there is so much content-driven pieces in this world from the different social media sites, different blogs, different websites. If you don't post a certain week, chances are they won't even notice, and that's okay. So it's better to post less, but to post better quality and more to give a better piece of information to your audience, as opposed to posting more regularly and having less of an impact.
Great. So I suspect this is a little related to the Lindsay Lohan example from earlier, but how do you find out, if you're not quite as famous as Lindsay, what other people's perceptions of you are and overcome any negative branding that might have occurred?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's obviously, we're not in the media like celebrities are, right? So we're not going to be able to read the stories that are posted about us like a celebrity like Lindsay Lohan or anything like that. But I think it's important to be in as many places as you can. So whether that's physically in networking events and just being able to meet with people and hear what the conversations are. And it's also important to have those contacts around that are have ears to the ground in many other places that can hear what people are saying and talking about and for you. You're not going to hear everything, but that's to be given. But having people that can help share what other people are talking about, I think, is valuable. Also on social, one of the biggest pieces of social media is not necessarily a communications tool, but a listening tool. And so you can be very successful on social media and not do a single bit of communications pushing. You can do a lot of listening and still be very good at it. So listening to social media, setting up Google alerts for if things do get posted or mentioned regarding you or your company or yourself. It's very important to make and set up those kind of places where you can create a little bit of a sight line into what people are talking about. And two, it's also just being in line with what is happening. I think we've all been in those situations where we're in a conversation with somebody, and as we're talking, we can't help but think that we sound so pretentious or we sound ridiculous, and you can't believe the words that are coming out of your mouth. It's important to be very in tune with some of the things that you're saying and to really trust your gut on everything. And if you feel like someone's not listening to you and cutting you out, chances are they are. And if you feel like you're being pretentious, chances are you probably are. So just being able to be in tune with your personal message is also very key.
Great. So now we're seeing a couple of questions about, I think, linking in together these different social networks to help build a resume and the pros and cons of using a blog or a personal website versus using something like Google+.
Yeah, so I think that the number one question that you have to ask yourself in dealing with anything regarding social media is, okay, where is my audience? If my audience is not on Google+, then I don't need to be on Google+ to help promote my personal brand. For me, I use Google Plus more so from a search engine optimization standpoint. People aren't using Google Plus yet, and I don't know if they will from the same standpoint that they are for LinkedIn, or it doesn't have that visibility. But I do know that Google, obviously, who runs Google Plus, holds a lot of weight in some of the things that you push through Google Plus into the search engine. So if you were to search something, sometimes results from Google Plus pop up because they hold more weight in that Google Plus arena. So I will use that space for some of my blog posts I push out. I will use that for Google Plus. LinkedIn, but I'm not necessarily using Google Plus to network. That's not what I'm using that for. That's not where I feel Google Plus's strengths are. So I will use Google Plus for helping promote some of my blog postings. Something like LinkedIn I would use more so for the actual networking, the virtual exchange of business cards. I would also use that as promoting different posts that I've shown through my blogs and being able to post that through there. And also I'm posting industry topics as well. A majority of what I post on my social channels has nothing to do with stuff that I've produced, but rather things that pertain to me and my industry and can allow me to become a resource for other people in the industry or the area that I'm trying to focus on. So if you go to any one of my channels, chances are you'll see a lot of articles on communications or marketing strategy or social media, even though that it wasn't created for me. Because it's very important to, again, you can establish yourself as an industry leader without producing the content yourself. It greatly helps if the content is produced by you because you have a much stronger sense of backing that is the information that you created. But you can also establish that through other people's content as well.
Great. Another question we have is, what percentage of our perception is defined by our brand when we walk through the door for an interview? So I think that might be looking at how that online brand transfers into an in-person one.
Yeah, I think it's, I draw a lot of close ties with business and dating because I think they are very, very similar. And a good example of this is I met my wife online, actually. And so I had that conversation with her and established my perception, my brand. She Googled me before we met once we started talking, and she had a perception of her going into this first date. And then you have that interaction, that job interview, if you will. And that's really, it's the step 3 of many that you have to get across. But you can't just jump to step 3. You have to go through step 1 and 2 to get to step 3. But if you don't have any of those, you can't get to where you want to go. So it's just as important, if not more important, than that virtual perception, because that can only take you so far. You can only hide behind a keyboard or the writing test, or being able to establish yourself as an individual in person. So again, you can't have that meeting without that setup, that online setup, but without the actual image perception of when you actually get there. It's very difficult to be successful without one of both of those components. So that's why that image piece is such a strong component of what the overall personal brand is. You really have to have that component in order to be successful. And when we say image, it doesn't mean attractive. It doesn't mean $1,000 suits. It just means thoughtfully putting thought behind the physical presence that you bring to a situation.
Here's a question I've also wondered along with Judy Harmon. How important is it with LinkedIn to give or receive endorsements? And what I think is a slightly different question, how important is it to participate in groups to help with personal branding?
Endorsements, I've always found these really interesting, endorsements. I think they can be very valuable. I will tell you, in hiring that I've done for certain roles, I've never looked through endorsements. They're like paid advertisements, basically. People aren't going to say that. They're not going to say that you need to work on your interpersonal communication skills or you need to work on your time management. These are basically friends or contacts that are just saying the great things about you, which are always great to see from a personal standpoint. But from a third party, I don't really hold much weight into those things. I think the most value you can have in endorsements is the individual favors you can provide to somebody else. So if a good contact of yours says, "Hey, Matt, do you mind doing an endorsement for me?" Sure, because that will buy goodwill with that individual. That's me watering that seed for that relationship. But will it help with the actual third party, or will it help with a future employer? Maybe not, but potentially. But so I guess that's what I do in endorsements. If you looked at my LinkedIn page, I don't have any endorsements. I haven't asked anyone for endorsements. I don't think that's not a position I want to put my colleagues in. But again, that's just my personal standpoint. I do think there is value for others in certain spaces when using endorsements. In regards to the groups, I think those are great. Those are great, basically networking opportunities that you can do from the comfort of your own home and through the keyboard and throughout the day. You can chime in when you want. You can gain knowledge and expertise when you can. That's probably one of the biggest pieces. You can gain so much knowledge from other people's conversations and what others are talking about, and through groups and chats like that you can help hone your expertise on certain topics. Also, while at the same time, networking with people virtually.
Great. So another question we have is, do you have any recommendations for how to stay up to speed on the latest social media tools and trends for using your social brand, particular blogs, people to follow, so that you're in the know?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, typically, I'm in the office about an hour before everyone else, and that entire time that I'm there, I spend reading. I don't touch my email. I don't touch any work. All I do is read news sites and blog stories and links from individuals, Twitter or LinkedIn. I really am just reading, purely reading during that time and throughout the day and on the weekends constantly of different topics and trends of things that may impact me and may impact the industry that I work in or the industry that I want to work in. And so we're so blessed to be in an age that is just entrenched and almost the point where it's too much, but there are articles on everything and anything that you want to read. So for me, I'm always on the Mashables, the Wireds. Those types of sites are great for staying up to date in the trends. And everyone's going to find their one or two favorites that they have. I've established, different feeds through my channels where if certain posts get added to, for example, Mashable.com, if a certain post hits Mashable.com, that hits one of my keywords that I established, like social media or marketing strategy. If a story gets pushed on that site and has that one of those words, it'll automatically get sent to me and updated me that, hey, story has been pushed. I don't want to do that for every story because they post dozens and dozens of stories a day, but this allows me to help filter the things that pertain to me, that allow me to help prioritize what I'm reading, because you clearly don't have all the time in the day to be reading everything that comes through. You have to prioritize and really focus on that. So find those individuals, too, on social sites that provide updates on topics that you're interested in. If folks were to check out my personal Twitter feed, you'd see, again, a majority of it is just news stories that have to do with the industry that I'm in. So find somebody like that is in an industry that you're in that is providing content, and then it has become a resource for you. I think that's key. One thing that I can do too is I can put together a small sample, like a worksheet of some of the things that the different sites that I go on a regular basis, or the different news channels that I commit to on a regular basis that kind of I look at consistently that help me. I can put together a list and share that with your members as well.
Great, thank you so much. One more question. Someone's been checking out your links and sees on the website that you have a logo for your name, and they've noticed that trend recently and are curious about how valuable you found that to be.
Yeah, I think when you think of, again, the branding of a company, that is just one piece of that brand, and so I think that can work very similarly when you think about a personal brand. But it's also very important not to get carried away where that would take away from any of the other pieces that you have. So the things that I have on my site, or that logo, or those images, it's not much. It's simple, but at the same time, you'll see a consistency throughout some of the things that I'm doing. So that way, when they see, maybe they just see my name, or they just see that logo, or they just see a certain kind of characteristic, that they can attribute that to me. Same way a brand, a business does. All of their marketing, all of their imagery, all of their branding is consistent. It's concise, the same colors, the same logos, the same voice. All of the things are consistent, and there's no reason why that should change for an individual. The only difference will be, obviously, the budget that you get versus the budget of a company. But aside from that, the strategy and the implementation of the branding is very, very similar.
Great. One last question that we have here is looking at a sort of company level. This is someone who's wondering how to get their county employees to engage with the social channels when they seem to want to keep the division between their work and personal lives. They don't want the county to see what it is that they do on their off time.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the biggest questions I get on a regular basis. Where is that line between professional and personal? Should I have two accounts? One for my professional kind of side of things and one for my personal side of things. And for me, I don't think so. I think you should have one centered voice for you. There's only one you, and so you should only have one you online. And it's tough to calm people's privacy fears and things like that online. But it is really important. If I follow that iffy rule that I created, that litmus test and those things that I've done, I have no issue with the things that I'm sharing being seen from a professional standpoint. Because I know that I've gone through it, I've filtered it through, and it's okay to see. Others may not have that same filter process, and they may question some of the things that they post that they don't want to see. that's when I would go into the privacy things and see if you can check out those different privacy rules. But from a company standpoint, I think it's important to encourage the individual presence of your workers and things. And so you're obviously not going to be able to force people to like or share some of the things that you're doing. And it's that can be a little tough. But I think once you're able to establish, I think, a little bit more of a like I said, a filter for some of the stuff, then you shouldn't have an issue sharing some of the things that you are.
Okay, I think
we're done with questions.
Oh. Sorry, Jennifer. Thank you. This is Mary Jo again. Thank you very much. I believe we're done with questions, as Jennifer had mentioned. Matt, I wanted to thank you very much for participating today and sharing your expertise and knowledge. It's definitely appreciated. This is still a growing area where a lot of individuals have concerns about being online. And I think you addressed some of that, especially in terms of how you can shape and mold that perception going forward, knowing what those resources are to protect privacy, but also engaging in the conversation. So thank you very much for sharing that. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
With that, I'm going to switch over just to a couple last remaining slides. And sorry, you're going to see a couple of things. Just wanted to wrap up today's discussion on personal branding and digital networking, and also mention that at the IAEM conference this year, the Emerging Technology Caucus is hosting the Crisis Technology Center in LinkedIn Lounge. The Crisis Technology Center will be a booth space, either in the general registration area or in the EMEX. And what we'll be able to offer is a cadre of professionals who are engaging on social media, who can help you set up your accounts, work with you to go through some of those principles that Matt was talking about. And also, in particular this year, we want to focus on enhancing your LinkedIn profile, making sure you have a professional-looking photo, that you've included summary information, and using that to enhance your online personal branding. So if there's any last remaining questions for the Emerging Technology Caucus, we can take those now. Otherwise, I would like to go ahead and wrap up our session, and thank you very much for your attendance.
Matt needs to make a quick announcement.
Oh, go ahead.
Hey, real quick, this is Matt Fearing. Thank you all for attending this webinar. I'm currently the chair of the Digital Engagement Committee, and it's our effort to bring more of this type of content through webinar to our members. Just as an FYI, our next webinar will be September 8th at 1 p.m. Eastern, and it will be on climate change and emergency management. So the association has a new ad hoc committee dealing all with climate change, and so it'll be their turn to present their information. And I really wanted to also thank Mary Jo and her team for being our first webinar in this new initiative. And if you liked it, please tell your friends, tell your regional presidents or your council presidents that this was a good experience, and we'd like to move it forward. But again, thank you very much for attending.
This is Mary Jo. Just wanted to thank you all very much for attending, and I wish you well this weekend.